Connecticut.
18-mile-an-hour ones. I had to pull out the long pants for the first time this year.
Ah.
I usually last until December, but today was like, you know what? Screw this. The wind chill feels like 35 out there, so it's cold. But it is sunny at least, so that's good. And oh, by the way, I don't know if you heard, but prayers to the families of the UVA football players that
Gosh.
got. I mean, yeah, that's just awful. I don't want to talk about it or get into it. Obviously some of those kids I knew through the recruiting process and all that, but just prayers out there because that is just an awful, awful thing. And it feels like a dumb
What
segue,
happened?
but
I saw something come across this morning. I don't know exactly what happened.
so a former football player apparently kind of ambushed a bus, and there were current football players on there. And 3 are dead, a couple more are in the hospital. It's a mass shooting from a former football player, and there's 3 fatalities that are on the current football team.
Oh.
Yeah, and again, okay, so here's the thing: like, if these weren't football players, obviously prayers and there's been a lot of mass shootings and a lot of incidents like this, and because we're in the football world, it hits us a little differently. So I feel, part of me, I put out a tweet saying prayers to the families of the football players. Well, the 2 people in the hospital may not be football players. Prayers to them as well, obviously. But for me, when something affects a team, like the player that died a year ago at Oregon, or this type of situation, it hits my world differently. These are the players that reportedly died: Devin Chandler, Deshaun Perry, and Lavelle Davis, all UVA football players. I didn't know any of them personally. I don't really get to know anybody personally through the recruiting process. But anytime something like that happens, just like, it just strikes you differently as a football person.
Yeah, I didn't. I saw something come across. I didn't know exactly. I figured it was a mass shooting. I just didn't know exactly what it was.
Yeah, awful.
Geez.
Now, dumb segue, stupid segue, insensitive segue, but there's no way to segue into this.
Yeah.
We love football, so I want to talk about positive stuff in football.
Yes,
and then we'll get into negative stuff in football, like Jimbo Fisher. So the promotion plan I talked to you off air that we offer, myfootballcamps.com/D1. It is crucial. If you're a 2024 kid under the radar right now is the time to strike. I talked to a few 2023s that were interested in the program. Some of them sort of have a small list of schools that they're already choosing from. This is the other thing we don't think about football players. I mean, if you're choosing college, you start your visits in your junior year to the schools you might be interested in, whether you're playing football or not. By this time, heading into middle of your senior year, you kind of have an idea where you want to go, or you have it down to a few schools. So I talked to some 2023 kids, and they had their schools narrowed and all that stuff. And I said, yeah, it's probably best, just to stay on your course, because now it's too late. I mean, we could do an expedited 2023 program like we're doing with a few kids where we hammer it out every week. But 2023, we'll take it case by case now, but 2024, now is the time. And 2025, 2026, 2027, you see Marshall got a Liberty invite for a game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, things happen. He's starting to get a lot of these questionnaires from schools, and then Liberty got, Hugh Freeze, and we're going to talk about him and UConn in a bit. That staff got him on their radar. Now, they can't reach out directly to him. He's a 2026. They can't pick up the phone or DM or anything like that. So they go through the coach, and they invite through the coach. Here's a sort of an open-ended opportunity to visit us. Come on an unofficial visit. We'd love to see you and host you as a recruit. Now, that's a big deal. It's not an official visit. You can't take one as a 2026. But you get there, you register, you get your lanyard with your name on it. You get on the sidelines, you get a tour of the facilities, so to speak. It's really a big deal, and it allows you to see the facilities and the program better. And once you get a visit like that, then you're going to get others. It's just the way it is. So good on him. He's getting out in front of it early. I mean, I talk to his dad all the time, obviously, as do you. He's a 2026. He needed to get on this early. Everybody does. So my focus now is on underclassmen who really need this. And they better strike now, because they're going to be coming to us when it's too late. And we'll do our best, but at that point we can't do anything.
I think that's a big thing. So 2024, this is the opportunity for you. This is the window. The evaluation period is going on. It's all of a sudden going to quickly happen. So players are going to commit. They're gonna sign for 2023. That's going to happen with the early signing period. Guys are recruiting you now, and if you're not starting this process, you don't want to get yourself behind the eight ball and be in the summer before your senior season trying to figure out what's going on in recruiting. This is the time to really boost yourself, give yourself the opportunity to leverage me and Mike and our following to build your recruiting platform. And you go to myfootballcamps.com/D1. And we'll be able to take care of you, pick the program you want. And it's a great opportunity. I mean, the guys that are utilizing this program, I'm just thinking of you brought up Marshlick, but I have to do this week the White Rhino, and I can't stop thinking about how he's gone from really having nothing to being going on these D1 visits. So it's a great opportunity, and for 2023 guys, what Mike said is 100% correct. And I'm speaking to 2024 at the same time I'm doing this. We can't take a 2023 that doesn't have a chance now at this point. It's too late. Or even like a guy that, because part of this is building our, we want to be able to give our guys an opportunity to succeed, and we don't want to take a situation on where we don't think we can actually help somebody. So if you're 2024, that's why this is such a good opportunity to take advantage of it right now, because you don't want to be behind the eight ball, all of a sudden looking up and saying, I don't have anything, or, last second drives for it. It's very difficult at that point. Do it when there's really a better opportunity. So
yeah. And to the point of the White Rhino, he had something. He was getting mail, he was getting feelers here and there, but that's not real. It's really not. I mean, recruiting letters, mass letters to recruits, mass emails to recruits, and all that stuff, that's not real. It's getting an offer to visit, an unofficial or official, obviously official better, but unofficial visit. Come see us. Then you get face-to-face time with the recruiting, director and the off-field assistants, and the position coach you'll get a little bit of time with before the game and all that stuff. It's face-to-face communication. Do you start getting direct correspondence from an individual rather than just direct mail? So you may think you have stuff going on, and you may be like, okay, I don't know if I need this. I'm getting mail already from these schools. Mail is nothing. Mail means nothing. And of course, mail, I say, like it's 1980. Any correspondence you're getting, unless a coach is directing it to you through personal interaction, through DM or text, and if you're too young, through your coach direct. So what happened is they DM'd the coach of Marshall direct from the recruiting coordinator at Liberty. That's real. That is real. That's a human being to a human being.
Yep.
The other stuff, you may think you have it, and you may be like, okay, I don't know if I want to spend money. I don't need this. Well, you do, honestly. It works. It's working to a level, this is also, we started this in May. I mean, this is in its infancy.
Right.
It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. and not just for us, but like for players, once you find one guy, and let's say somebody in our program gets a preferred walk-on offer at a Power 5 school, and that's what they want. Or let's say they're an FCS kid and they get a FCS scholarship, and that's what they want. Or they are somewhere in between. That school that found that kid is going to check our messages all the time. They're going to check every notification we put out there because they found one, and now they're going to want to find others. And I've talked to a ton of coaches this week. When we talk about high-level stuff, we're not talking about, specific players and individual recruiting. But I talked to a lot of coaches this week. Some of them I've criticized, which is my job. Some of whom are trying to sort of spin something bad that happened in a positive way, and they're coming to me to do it. Some of them are searching for other jobs that want their name put out there. Everybody wants something, but the common denominator is that they're reaching out to me. I'm not with Rivals anymore. I don't have this big company, but people know that I'm going to be listened to. So when you're trying to put a feeler out there for, oh yeah, such and such would be interested in the Colorado job, or such and such is having a horrible season and their team is awful, but this is why, and here are the excuses, or such and such lost a recruit and they got to spin it in a positive. They're coming to me for that. It doesn't matter whether it's Mike Farrell Sports or our little program, that they know who to go to. So that's kind of what I'm noticing more and more is coaches are fickle, man. If you bring them something that they like, they will continue to come back to you. If you're not legitimate in what you're saying, if you try to sell them on something that's not real, if I try to sell a kid on Alabama, or if I try to sell a kid on USC to Nick Saban or Lincoln Riley, and he's not even close to that level, I mean, like you're ridiculous, and you're in it for the money. So we're smart enough to know what's going on. You just have to trust. And in this economy, this economy sucks. Money is hard to come by, but Coach Manis always says to these parents, you're spending thousands of dollars on recruiting anyways. Put it in the right place and let it work for you. And I think that's what a lot of people are not doing at this point in time, and are starting to figure out.
Well, yeah. He always says, and I think this is really good, you spend thousands of dollars going to showcases, camps, summer camps, and you're just basically, in most cases, a wing and a prayer type of deal, right? And we obviously, both of us have run camps. That's basically my livelihood, but I really feel that the reason why you go to camps is because you want to be chosen out of, let's say there's 100 kids at a camp. You want to be one of the 5 or 10 guys that are looked at there, right? That people say, wow, this is the guy, this is a guy. Well, I have to say that's depending on the place, especially in certain locations, that can be very difficult. And you could say this from just experience sake. If I was to send you over a list of 100 kids, the only ones you're going to ask me about is, hey, which one of these award winners or kids that are 6'5", how did they look? Right? That's it. So, and then the rest you'll figure over time, if somehow that kid became good, you'll find, figure it out at some point in the future. So camps are great, but you're also banking on that you're going to be one of the best. The thing that's nice about our program is it's not a camp with 100 other people. We're focused on you and what you do. You don't have to show us versus other people. You have to show us what you can do on your film, and that's what we're worried about. And that's what I think is such a nice thing about it. Is we can look exactly at what you do and say, hey, this is a guy for this level. This is a guy, or potentially for this level, and this guy has this ability based off of that. And I think that's the a really cool thing about the program is we're able to focus on this individual and see what they do well.
Yeah, and what happens at camps? So you pick the MVPs at your camps, and those are the kids that are focused on. Why? Those are the kids that the coaches are focused on. But why is that? Because you picked them. When I was doing camps and running camps and creating camps, it would always be, who'd you like as MVP? Or I'd always get a text after the camp, Driving away from a Charlotte camp, I get a text from every coach in the Southeast to be like, who'd you like? And it's not just about MVP. Like, who'd you like second at running back? This, that, and the other. They want the opinion of someone else. You can go to camps and ball out. I've seen it a billion times. You go to camps and ball out. All right, so you got a kid with 0 stars, and you got a kid with 4 stars, and they're both in the wide receiver group. And it comes down to the 0-star kid plays better, has a better camp, puts in more effort, runs better routes, catches the ball more consistently. The 4-star kid does okay. Who are they going to pick? They're going to pick the 4-star kid, and he's the one who's going to get the attention. And the 0-star kid's going to get maybe in a sleeper article on a Wednesday that no one pays attention to. And the reason they do that is because they want more big-time kids to come back to camps. That's the way it works. If a kid in this day and age is going to go to a camp and he's already got 25 offers and need a 4-star kid, it's valuable for that company to get him to the camp because that's what sponsors want. They want the future NFL guys. So you have to reward him with that MVP if it's a toss-up. So you could go and ball out. I've seen kids ball out and get not noticed at all from a camp that you put 4 hours in. Or we could do a video, put it up, and get noticed in 30 seconds.
That's right.
So I'm not saying don't go to camps.
Technically, you should do both. Right. Technically, you should be doing all.
Do everything, but don't rely on camps and say that's how I'm going to be discovered, because it's not gonna.
That's exactly right. I think we're relying on, and it's just like look with our videos, right? We don't want you to disengage from the recruiting process once our videos are out. We want you to engage more in the recruiting process, leverage the videos that we make to be able to put that out there to the coaches, take that evergreen content, send it over to the recruiting coordinator. So utilize it. It is, and that's the part of the recruiting process from an education standpoint. Our videos will be really valuable. Now also take that, because now you have that endorsement from me and Mike, and you can then send it to the college coaches, who will then look at what we actually are saying while your film is playing, okay? And they could think, Mike knows what he's talking about on this one. I don't know if he does know what he's talking about. But you want them to look at it, and that's the thing. That's where you need the eyeballs. The big mistake is that people don't understand is the eyeballs are the key. If there's no eyeballs on what you're doing, you might as well be running routes on your Twitter in the dark. Okay. I mean, that's really what it is.
And it's multiple too. I mean, you can't go to one camp,
right,
ball out, and just stop going to camps. You have to go to the next camp and the next camp and the next camp and the next camp. Yep. You have to go to multiple camps from your freshman year up until your junior year, when everything really, really starts, and prove yourself. If you're not that gifted 6'4", 210-pound kid who plays at a high level, 5A school in Florida, who has, 20 kids in the last 10 years have come out of that program and been Division I players, they're going to know about you. But if you're not that kid, they're not going to know about you. So you can go to one camp and that's it. No, you got to keep going. And with this, that's why we say, okay, you want to try the one time. That's great. One time isn't going to create miracles for you. It's the 6 month to the 12 month. You got to have eyeballs, but you got to have eyeballs constantly. So, the first time a Cade Kruger shows up on our feed, people are like, oh, whatever. Who's that? Second time. Okay. Third time is like, oh, who's this? I gotta find out who this is. And then the 6th, 7th time, it's like, okay, now I know who this kid is. I know exactly what school he plays for. I know he was the backup for Klubnik. I know what he brings to the table. I've seen more videos on him. Now he's a human being to me. But it took over and over and over again for that to happen. It's just a grind. It's persistence. Listen, I'm starting over as an independent guy. I didn't expect to start a website and get 100,000 people on my site every day. Didn't expect that, and that's not the case. I have to work at it every day. And then, suddenly, this many thousand becomes this many thousand, and this many thousand becomes this many thousand, because it's persistence, because I'm constantly in the thought process of fans and people who want to read my stuff. That's just how it works. So,
Yeah.
born on third base, great. That's like a St. Thomas Aquinas kid who is a great football player. He's born on third base. It's already done for him. Those coaches come through his school every year already. He doesn't have to do a whole lot. But you're not that kid. You need us.
There's no doubt about it.
You know who doesn't need us?
What's that?
You know who doesn't need us?
Who?
Jim freaking Mora Jr.
Ooh.
Best coaching job. Okay, so there's 3 coaching jobs that stand out to me in the last decade that are fascinating to me. It doesn't mean they're the best. 2 of them involve scandal, and Jim Mora Jr. does not. So the first is Bill O'Brien and what he did at Penn State, keeping those recruits together, keeping Christian Hackenberg, 5-star quarterback, in the class, keeping Penn State afloat and alive through record-setting scholarship reductions and a scandal that rocked the college football world, and we'd never seen anything before or like it since. The second is Matt Rule at Baylor with a huge off-field sexual assault issue at Baylor, loss of scholarships, loss of players, people allowed at that point in time to transfer immediately, even though there was no transfer portal then. And what he did there as a fish out of water, going 1-11 his first year and winning 10 games, I think each of his last 2 years, just phenomenal, fascinating, finacitating, right? Just amazing. And then Jim Mora, this freaking guy, right? Now we all know I don't like Randy Edsall. It's clear. And I think he went his second time. I think he screwed over UConn, did it the wrong way. Never been a really good human being. Got his money in Maryland, screwed that program over, and then went back to UConn and mailed it in. Screwed them over too, and took his money, just as I expect him to do, and left this program just in disarray. This team last year won 1 game all season long against Ivy League Yale. Okay, so that's not FBS. This is a team that lost to Holy Cross, Middle Tennessee. They were 1-11 last year. All right, they lost every game by 3-4 touchdowns. Fresno State 45-0, Purdue 49-0, Army 52-21, on and on. It's just a joke. And now he's got them bowl eligible. You get 6 wins. I mean, you beat Boston College, which is down this year, yeah. But you beat Fresno State. They're not great either, but that's the team you would have lost a year ago, 45-0. You beat Liberty. Liberty was a team that was ranked at some point this year, beat everybody but Wake Forest. I mean, this is amazing. This guy should be considered for some group of 5 jobs at the very least. Now, he's coached at the Power 5 level. Now, we'll tell you this. At UCLA, really an underrated recruiter, a great recruiter. Not so much great coach there. Maybe they didn't want it. Maybe UCLA didn't care enough about football, and he was obviously in the NFL. So he fell pretty far all the way to UConn, but the job he's doing here in Connecticut is absolutely remarkable. One of the 3 best I've seen over the last, it's more than a decade, because I think 2010 was Penn State. So it's been, in the last 15 years, one of the best 3 jobs I've ever seen.
I agree. And I think on the UCLA, he did do decently well at UCLA. But I think what the one of the issues was they had Noel Mazzone as the offense coordinator, who had invented this end zone offense, which at the time was a few years before was really becoming a thing that people had a hard time stopping. By the time he got to UCLA with it, people had started to figure it out. The only reason I remember it because we started to play against it at the high school level, and I had brought in end zone. Ran a camp of it, his end zone had them run a camp so I could learn the terminology and how they run their offense so I could defend against it. And other people were buying that end zone system that Noel Mazzone had. You could buy it online. So by the time he got to UCLA, I already had bought it. So that means that, listen, every coach in the country had bought that system, right? And now some of them were running versions of it, but now you had a little bit better opportunity also to defend it. So what was in vogue 5 or 6 years before was now started to people knew how to defend it. So I think that was a little bit of the process. I think he may have gotten rid of Noel
He
at
did.
one point, you know what I mean? But that
I mean,
was
he was there for 2012 through 2015, the first years, and that's when UCLA was successful under Moore, 9-5, 10-3, 10-3, and then they dipped to 8-5. And the funny thing about it, Mazzone, is that he started not developing quarterbacks, and he lost his reputation pretty quickly. He went to Texas A&M for a couple of years. And I remember all these recruits wanted to go play for him. Josh Rosen wanted to play for him at UCLA, and then Tate Martell wanted to play for him at A&M, and that's why he committed there originally before decommitting. And then he went to Arizona, and everything just sort of fell apart under Sumlin. But yeah, the guy, guys, he was a good coach, and the ironic thing is he was at UConn last year as an offensive assistant, but he's not tied to him anymore. And what Mora's doing is
a good thing.
It's a great thing.
Knows his own system. Everybody runs parts of his system now in their offense because it's become that thing where they send the running back in motion. They look to maybe throw him and they run. Everybody runs a part of the system, but his system at the beginning of that part when he first went there was still in at the tail end of being in vogue before everybody started to understand how to possibly defend it. You know how it is, run and shoot when it first came out, all these things. And then there's a process, as I call it, they start to bastardize these systems so they can now the new guys have bastardized it. So now you can win again with, you know what I'm saying? But when you were running, once people start to figure it out, now you have to bastardize it. If you don't bastardize that system, then people know how to defend it. And that's what was starting to happen at the tail end. And I think that kind of cost him. So the long and the short way of saying, I thought he did a pretty good job at UCLA. I just think that part of it cost him a little bit where he could have kind of skyrocketed, had the chance to skyrocket, and it didn't. And now he's at UConn, now kind of evolving the system, right? And obviously his leadership is exceptional. We haven't gotten to with UConn. He hasn't had a chance to recruit yet. So he's doing it with the other guys' players.
Bad players too, honestly. I mean, they're winning, yeah, but there's not a lot of athleticism on this football team at all. It was just mailed-in recruiting. So what he's done is he's taken these ingredients that he's been given, and they said, okay, I want you to come up with a 5-course meal, and I want you to, wow us. And he's given all this, those cooking shows where they give you a can of tomato soup and, you got to just wing it. And that's what he's done. But he was smart enough to keep Luis Vanos as his defense coordinator. He was the interim last year. He's put together a nice staff. Some young guys. You remember EJ. You remember EJ Barthel. Yeah, but other guys too that nobody's ever heard of. Kenny McClendon and Gordon Samus and
Charlton.
Yeah, and everybody's heard of the Dalton Hilliards of the world, but it's just amazing. I would have never thought in a million years that he would be able to do this. And I didn't believe at first. So, I've been here in Connecticut for a very long time. And, they lost to Utah State 31-20. And I thought Utah State was going to be okay because they were good last year and they had a quarterback. And they ended up turning out to be one of the worst teams in college football. But I didn't know that at the time. And I'm like, what the hell are they staying within 11 points of them? And then they beat Central, my alma mater. And then they got drilled by Syracuse 48-14. Then they got drilled by Michigan 59-0. And then NC State 41-10. And I'm like, oh, here we go. This is UConn. And this is what I expect. They're going to go 1-11 again. There's no hope for this program. And then they beat Fresno State in a tough one. Then they beat FIU. Then they lose to Ball State. And I'm like, oh, well, 3 wins is a pretty good year. 3-9 is not bad. But then they beat BC, and that's when things took off. I mean, they started to believe in themselves, and then they beat UMass. UMass sucks. But Liberty was favored by 13.5 points. Liberty is a program where Hugh Freeze, and this is a segue into the Auburn job, just got a $5 million extension, $5 million per year to coach the Liberty Flames. But Auburn's still interested in him, and he's one of their leading candidates for that job. This is a team that beat BYU. This is a team that beat Arkansas. This is a team that lost to Wake Forest by 1 when they were the top 20 football team. That's a good team, and UConn handled them. So kudos to Jim Mora Jr. I don't think he's long for UConn. If I were him, honestly, and this is no offense to UConn, I would get out of there as soon as possible. I would take whatever group of 5 job I could take with better facilities. They have okay facilities there. I've seen them. But with a campus, a stadium on campus, Rensselaer Field's 45 minutes from UConn, I would just get out. I would take this like miracle 6-5 or 7-5 or 6-6, whatever season it's going to end up, get the hell out. That's what I would do.
Well, as a UConn alum and someone who played there, I hope he doesn't. But I think my gut tells me he'll be there at least one more year, because just somehow, was it breaking news? Because your face changed.
No. Some of the promo things is just funny. It's just funny. This individual, this football player, it was a 2025, and I watched this film. It's pretty good, and I said, "That's good stuff." He's like, "Thanks for taking the time to look at me." And I said, "You're a good candidate for us to help with our promo packages, because I think you could go someplace." He's like, "Yes, sir. I'll be more than happy to help promote you." I just saw it, and I just shook my head. He's got 58 followers. That's very sweet, nice kid, right? But I'm like, maybe I'm just a moron. Maybe I just don't tell people about this program right, because, now he wants to promote me, which is sweet. But I looked at it. That's why my face changed. I was like, what? I don't know if I have the energy to explain it at that point. I don't.
You have to explain to him.
No. That's like that's climbing up a big, big mountain. I could tell, and I don't think I want to. Good player too, has a chance, but needs help. But I don't think I got it. So, anyways, that was funny. Oh gosh.
Well, interesting segue on it. So with the Auburn job, right?
Yeah.
And I know we want to talk some Texas A&M too. I saw, is this possible that Auburn is talking to Lane Kiffin?
That's their sources say that's their number one target. So here's the good and bad of that. Lane Kiffin's being criticized this weekend because he didn't beat Alabama, and Ole Miss fans wanted to beat Alabama. He went for it on 4th and 8, and he shouldn't have. And the play calling down the stretch was not good, and they don't have the offensive line to protect Jackson Dart. They lost to Alabama. Okay, Alabama is a really good football team. Alabama has lost to 2 top 10 programs this year by a total of 4 points. But people think Alabama's down this year, and they think Kiffin should have won that game at home. So Ole Miss fans are complaining about him. What Ole Miss fans don't understand is you're lucky to have him, because Auburn would take him in a second. And they're selling this to him. First of all, this is a much higher paying job. I think they're going to pull out potentially $8 million a year for the right coach. Mm-hmm. And for the right coach, it could be guaranteed. And by the right coach, I mean maybe Lane Kiffin. They might throw a 10-year, $80 million fully guaranteed contract out. You don't know. They got a lot of money at Auburn. The second thing they've got is recruiting. They're in the state of Alabama. Of course, you're going to be second fiddle to Alabama for a bit, but you border Georgia. You recruit Florida well. You can recruit into Mississippi. Auburn has a very, very strong recruiting thumbprint, which Ole Miss does not have. And Kiffin is the type of guy who likes challenges. Okay, come into the state, go against Darth Vader. Be under the skin of Nick Saban all the time. And when Nick Saban leaves and retires, you'll be the guy and the man. So it's all attractive to Lane Kiffin in that respect. But on the flip side, it's not a great job, because you got to deal with the boosters. You got to deal with all the politics, all the garbage there that Gus had to deal with for years, that Harsin, they wanted him fired, and they made up stuff about his personal life. Not a fun job. But yes, he's their number one candidate. I believe Hugh Freeze is their number 2 candidate. And I think they want one of those 2 guys.
If they get Lane Kiffin, it's going to be a steal. I mean, really is a steal. I think the only thing that Lane Kiffin will have to continue to shore up is how to stop other people. But as far as scoring wise, like I know that Chris is criticized a little bit, but he does score a whole lot of points. I mean, his teams score a lot of points.
Well, he does it so many different ways too. I mean, now if you look at this, team, this Ole Miss team, they can't pass protect, and Jackson Dart's not a great quarterback. And they got a couple of receivers, Mingo and Heath are good receivers, but they were a running team. This is a running football team. They got 3 running backs that are very, very explosive. They can power football. But when you think of Lane Kiffin, what do you think of? You think of wide open passing offenses. But he also did it without that at Alabama. So the guy can coach any personnel he has, which is great. He's a very sharp coach. He can recruit like crazy. It would be great. I just don't know if he's waiting for Texas A&M to open up, which is even better, or LSU if Brian Kelly, retires in a few years, or Alabama. I don't know if he's waiting for a bigger job, but if they did get him, you're right. It would be an absolute steal. The guy could coach.
Yeah, absolute steal. Which brings me to Texas A&M because you mentioned it. Oh, Texas A&M is a disaster.
Yeah. So he's an egomaniac, and we knew that. Hold on. We knew he was an egomaniac. We knew all the stories I heard behind the scenes at Florida State as to when he left and why he left and how he kind of sabotaged that program and left them in dire straits. And then they throw $100 million or $96 million or whatever it is at him at Texas A&M, and he's in his 5th year, and they're not going to make a bowl. And their preseason top 10 team, they were number 6, and they're not going to make a bowl. I think that's happened 3 times in the history of all of college football. In AP history, I think there's been only 3 other times where a team that was in the top, 6 doesn't make a bowl game. Now he's suspending players because they're wearing long sleeve shirts. I hear in practice he's berating everybody. He's blaming everybody but the quarterbacks. He's trying to be this tough guy coach, and his team's snickering and laughing at him behind the scenes. A lot of these players chose Texas A&M, arguably for NIL and money. They're not buying in, and he's going to really have a difficult job, I think, keeping his job. They got to pay $86 million to get rid of him. And every week it's looking like that's a bargain to get rid of this guy. They lost to Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Florida, Auburn. They're going to beat UMass because UMass is horrible. But imagine if they lost that. I mean, we thought they'd beat App State. But you can't lose to UMass. It's really almost virtually impossible. But then they're going to lose to LSU. They're going to go 4-8. He's got to be fired. He's got to go. He's horrible.
$86 million. Now, if you're Jimbo Fisher and they walk in, they say, Jimbo, listen, it's not working anymore. We're cutting your $86 million check. Do you go, thank you very much, I'll see you later? I'll see you. See you. These guys' egos are so big that they probably – I think I might, if it was that, I'll come back in a few years. I would probably come back in a few years. But I don't think I'd be an analyst. Like a lot of these guys would just go do for a while. I would do the Orgeron route. I would have to say, you know what, I'll take a few years. Orgeron's gone completely. But I would say, you know what, I'll take a few years before I come back.
Yeah. And Orgeron said, which door do you want me to go out after he, found out what his buyout was? I think the first thing they're going to do is try to negotiate that buyout down. I think the second thing they're going to do is try to find dirt on this man, which I think there's a ton of, and try to get him out with cause so they don't have to pay this $86 million. I think you're going to start seeing a lot of awful, awful things come out in regards to Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, because when you pay somebody that much money and they become such a colossal failure, you really, really, really get angry, and you don't want to pay them that $86 million. They didn't earn it. He guy's 3-7 with 2 games left. He won't change the play calling duties. He's the play caller. Their offense is abysmal and horrible. He's stubborn. He's arrogant. They just scored 10 points against an Auburn team that stinks with an interim head coach. he just doesn't care. And he's such a narcissist that he is going to dig his heels in. But I think these boosters are going to start digging and digging and digging and trying to find dirt and trying to find a way to get this guy out with cause so they don't have to pay him. And that's where it's going to get interestingly ugly and kind of fun in a way. Because you reap what you sow in this industry and in this business. Karma is a bitch. You did what you did at Florida State. You knew you were doing it. And I mean, you knew you were leaving. You mailed it in that season. You stopped recruiting. You left that program in shambles. They made a bad hire in Willie Taggart. He couldn't clean it up. Norvell's in his third year, and he's finally getting some traction. But you set that program back 6 years. So now you're going to get what's coming to you, I believe. So you're going to see this offseason. It's going to be Jimbo this, Jimbo that. This is that. The transfer portal is going to be filled with Aggies. I can't even think of a more disaster. I think I'm trying to figure out which is more of a disaster, him staying or going. Like going, you have to start all over again. Who do you hire for this job? How do you come up with the money for it? I know boosters will come up with the money, but how do you rebuild this program when it's in such disarray? Maybe you hire Jim Mora because he knows what to do to replace an absolute jerk. But you can't keep him. You can't keep him. You're 4-8 this season, heading into next season. You can't. How do you keep them? So they're in a real, real bad spot. And I don't feel bad for them. They threw a lot of money at a guy that everybody knew wasn't a good guy.
Yep. Makes Jameis Winston, you come to realize that Jameis Winston must have been pretty darn good when he was obviously won the Heisman and all that, and they won the national championship. But he really was the catalyst because Jimbo Fisher, since Jameis Winston, has just gone downhill.
Well, and he protected Jameis Winston to no end. I mean, Jameis Winston, there was the whole sexual assault accusations and all this stuff, and he played through that the entire season. He got suspended for one game for the incident with the crab legs or whatever, but Jameis Winston was kind of a real immature kid in college, and Jimbo protected him with everything he had because he knew he was a transcendent talent. Yes. Number one pick in the draft and a guy who could win him a national championship. And it worked. But now, and again, I don't feel sorry for Jimbo. I don't feel sorry for saying any of these things about Jimbo because honestly, if someone came to me today and said, you suck, you're such a disappointment to us, we can't stand you, we wasted all our money on you, we're begrudgingly giving you $86 million, I would be whistling out the door. I don't know what I'd do next. Coach has got to coach, though. I don't think he would sit back. Like I asked one of my buddies who was with Matt Rule at the Panthers, and I said, "What's next for Matt Rule?" And his answer was a beach. Like he got $60+ million guaranteed from the Panthers, and I just laughed, and he laughed because we both know that's not the case. Matt Rule, all 5'6" of him, in his little pasty, body is not going to be laying on a beach chilling. He can't. He's got a coach. So he'll be back in it. And Jimbo, I think the landing spot for Jimbo might be funny because it might be West Virginia because that's where he's from. That's the job he kind of covets. And Neil Brown isn't getting it done, even though they just beat Oklahoma. So he'll land someplace and coach again, but
Oklahoma's another. It's too early, but it isn't almost like it's a disaster.
Kind of fun to watch, though. I'll tell you why. Because the Oklahoma fans were so butthurt by Lincoln Riley leaving that every one of them to a man said Brent Venables is better. We're better off. Hold on. Lincoln Riley sucks. Did you see how we played in the playoffs? Our team was regressing. Well, guess what? Lincoln Riley was the reason you were good there. Bob Stoops before that. You need a good coach. And he's successful at USC and has them going for a playoff run. So I know you were kind of butthurt that he left, but they were just so adamant and so arrogant and so over the top, repulsively awful about how Lincoln Riley's the devil and Brent Venables is the savior of the world because now we have a defensive coach and he's going to coach defense. Well, your team's 5-5. You stink, and it's kind of funny to see that come up and occur.
Yeah, it's mind blowing, but it makes it sound. I just think as a whole, like the the it's over and over again that like the choosing of these coaches is so interesting, and how almost like there's more bad choices than there are good. Bad decisions, I shouldn't say choices, bad decisions made than there are good. It's almost like if you were to, people don't make these bad decisions on like a low, like an entry level programmer in a uh like something that's not that important, but an ultimately important job that you're throwing $100 million in. It's just mind blowing. Like, uh,
Yeah, but the people making $100 million decisions are also narcissistic, you know, big wiggy, smarter than everybody else in the room. People like us who are managing sort of smaller entities, we really take into account each decision carefully. Um, I just think this is about, who can impress who in a room. I picture that boardroom at Texas A&M when Jimbo was hired, a bunch of people in 10-gallon hats or whatever gallon hats they are, sitting around all talking about this, that, and the other, bragging about how much money they got, and we're going to spend it all to get Jimbo away from Florida State, and we don't care if he's a good man or a good, you know, coach.
coach.
And Venables, listen, to his defense, we just did an article, what's wrong with Oklahoma, and a lot of it speaks on my website. A lot of it speaks to what was left as well. I mean, Lincoln Riley left.
That's true.
He didn't just leave. He benched one quarterback who ended up transferring in Spencer Rattler. And then he took with him the other quarterback who actually kind of saved their season last year in Caleb Williams. And not only did he take him, he took Mario Williams. He also kind of ran out Jaden Hasselwood to Arkansas, Austin Stogner to South Carolina. I mean, Lincoln Riley, he didn't do it the way Jimbo did it. Jimbo kind of did it meticulously over a couple years. Lincoln Riley, all in a fell swoop of like a month, just kind of set Oklahoma back for this season and put Brent Venables in a situation where I got to take Dylan Gabriel as a transfer. And if he gets hurt, we're in big trouble. And he got hurt. And we lost like a ton of draft picks to the NFL. This is kind of really not the right time. So for Riley, it was the right time to leave. For Venables, it wasn't the right time to come in. But that being said, it doesn't matter. If you're getting paid this amount of money, and Venables is making a lot of money, it's on you. That's life. And if it's too much for you, get out. But you got to take the criticism with the money. I was watching this morning, we're talking about Dak Prescott. I'm a Cowboys fan, right? Talking about Dak Prescott. What?
Me too. I'm a Cowboys fan.
Okay, so Dak Prescott, right, stinks. I don't think he's very good. I think he's overrated. And he threw 2 bad interceptions in the game yesterday against Green Bay. And you can blame Mike McCarthy all you want. You can blame Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, all you want. You can blame this, that, and the other. You can play the defensive scheme where Micah Parsons was on the edge 10 times the whole game. But it comes down to the guy that's made $90 million over the last 2 years, who's getting paid that $45 million a year to be your quarterback, has to perform. So when he does, you give him kudos. You're great. You're a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, top 8 quarterback. When he doesn't, he gets the blame. Now, if you don't want that, don't take the contract. Don't be a quarterback. Go off. I don't know.
And Cooper Rush, here's the thing. Cooper Rush gets paid nothing.
And he's been better.
I thought he was better.
Well, he has been better. Like his QBR is 9 points higher than Dak's.
Yeah, I mean, it was when did he lose a game this year?
I think he lost one.
He lost the last one, I think.
Right.
I think he lost the last one.
He was statistically better. On the field, have been better. You could argue the team plays harder for him. That could be an argument.
Hey, so what if we have questions about our policy? What if it's late?
So I tried to figure out how to get rid of these auto plays off of ESPN.
Yeah.
I Googled it. I did all the instructions for my browser. It's set the way it should be set, and they won't stop. I think ESPN's an unstoppable force. There's just no way I can stop these videos because they happen in every podcast I do. The videos come up and they just play and they play loud, and I can't turn down the volume because I have to hear you.
Right.
So there's just no winning. ESPN, you win again, but yeah, the Dallas Cowboys. This is a way they should lose to the Packers. The Packers are in disarray. Nobody likes Rodgers. Nobody's playing for that dude. But yeah, he lost to the Eagles. Cooper Rush did.
The best team.
Right. And they lost the season opener to the Buccaneers, but Dak played.
That was Dak.
Yeah. So they, he's beaten the Giants, good team. Now the other teams he's beaten, crap. The Rams stink, the Lions stink, the Bears stink. But he's been better. His statistics, when you look at the stats for the quarterback play, one guy's making $90 million, the other guy's making nothing. The QBR rating is higher for Cooper Rush as a player, 9 points higher than Dak Prescott, and he's making no money. So my point is, you want the big bucks, you take what comes with it. If I sign some sort of crazy $90 million contract with ESPN tomorrow, and everybody on earth wants to call me a jerk for my opinions, I have to take that and willingly do it. It sucks now because I'm not making $90 million. But
still perform. And still perform. Right?
Yeah. I mean, hey, what do you want? What's the matter? What are you crying about? So anyways, I don't feel bad for the coaches that are making a ton of money and struggling. I don't feel bad for calling them out. They're human beings. Listen, I just called Jimbo Fisher every name in the book. I don't know the man. I just know what people have told me about him. I don't know if he's a narcissist. He may cry himself to sleep every night. He may have the worst self-esteem known to man. I don't know. He may be very hurt by everything people are saying. I don't see how you cannot be. But he's got to take that because he signed up for this job, and that's what this job requires.
I have one question on it. I'm curious on your take on this because it was a big controversy with the NFL. Jeff Saturday, who, by the way, won. Okay. Yeah. Especially a lot of it came from former head coaches and all this stuff. Like, you can't, it's a travesty. Like Bill Cowher said, it's a travesty. You know what I think? I think the head coaching job is a top head coach is a fantastic leader, right? That's really kind of the most important. Yes, you want them to know X and O's. Yes, you want obviously you could hire a lot of those guys, so you need to know what they know. So you need to have that knowledge base. But it says to me like how arrogant so many of the coaches are that somehow they're all of a sudden building rockets. They're not building rockets. They're coaching football, which requires leadership. And it drives me nuts when guys who were like, oh my God, Jeff Saturday, he never coached before. It's an insult. He needs to go. Jeff Saturday has to go there and be a leader and get everybody else to perform their job. Okay. And he has to relate to the players and motivate the players. But the fact that it's like an insult to their profession. Imagine in regular business, Mark Zuckerberg, okay? And I'm not a Facebook fan or anything. I'm just saying the people who give money out to people to build companies said, Mark, we know you're a genius and have a perfect SAT score and just built the greatest application at the time that we've ever seen in social media, but you haven't paid your dues. You weren't a GA you weren't an engineer for Google for the last 10 years, and we can't give you $100 million to build your company. See how ridiculous that sounds? That's what they sound like to me as a outsider, even though I've coached for a long time. As an outsider profession, that's what it sounds like to me with coaches. Sounds like spoiled babies to me.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest issue people have with Jeff Saturday being hired was the Rooney Rule. This is a guy who was friends with Irsay, played center there for a long time, legendary Colt, and there's a lot of people that look at this as, this is a white privileged guy who's being tapped on the shoulder by his buddy to be head coach when he's not even on the staff. Um, you know, and I can't speak to that, because I don't really know what happened and why he was chosen.
Mhm.
To me, it looked like this team was tanking. I mean, they bench Matt Ryan, Sam Elliger's awful. Then they hold out Jonathan Taylor a couple more weeks than expected, and that's a concussion issue. So who knows what's behind that? But and then they hire Jeff Saturday, who picks a play caller no one's ever heard of, who's 30 years old, and everybody's laughing at it. But then Jeff Saturday comes in, and guess what he does? He starts Matt Ryan. He says, Sam Ellinger is not the guy who's going to lead me to victory. Jonathan Taylor plays. They put it together. Now, they beat the Raiders, who are horrible, but he's 1-0. But that's what people were really upset about is again, pay your dues, but the Rooney Rule, where you're required to interview minority coaches. I think the worry is that this guy's going to have maybe some success at the Colts, and they're just going to name him the next head coach. Without going through the due process. But when it speaks to leadership, it also speaks to big names. Rich Bisaccia was the head coach of the Raiders last year after John Gruden was fired when it found out he sent all those racist emails.
Right.
Rich Bisaccia is a guy who was never a coordinator at any level, never a head coach at any level. But that team won, I believe, their last 5 games. They got into the playoff. They had a good playoff game. They didn't win. Derek Carr was a leader on that team. They were sinking. The locker room was happy. And they didn't hire him because he's Rich Bisaccia. He's not a big name guy. So they went out and got Josh McDaniel, the golden boy, who already sucked at Denver, who now sucks with the Raiders, who built his name on the back of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And now the Raiders are an absolute disaster. And Derek Carr yesterday in the press conference was crying, talking about the sacrifices made by some people to play and practice and even to sleep at night with their injuries, and others aren't making that. It's a mess. The Raiders are a mess. They're the worst team arguably in football, and it's one decision like that, taking a big name guy over a guy who's more qualified.
Yep.
Maybe Jeff Saturday is the most qualified person to take over the Colts. Maybe Irsay knows him that well, knows how smart he is, and maybe we're all wrong about that.
Well,
but
where does when you're an owner? To me, you own a business. Okay, you want to hire somebody in a situation where distrust has become the norm in your organization. You want to put in someone that you trust. I don't even think it has anything to do with wins and losses. I don't think it has anything to do with it. He trusts Jeff Saturday that he would have his back as an owner. He played for him for up 10 years with Peyton Manning. Okay. He was the leader of that offensive line, and he trusts Jeff Saturday. I don't, if he became the head coach, okay, because let's say he won a bunch of games and became the head coach, he will have earned it. But what Irsay is looking for is to put somebody in that he trusts, because he don't trust any of the assistants, he don't trust any of those guys all the way up and down in the organization. Okay, they're no longer trustworthy. He needed to put someone that he trusts that will have his best interest as an owner in the organization. And I can't fault a person who owns the business.
Right, can do whatever they want, but you can't. You can't.
Right. Well, yeah, but
you can't.
Right. You can't do whatever you want because of the Rooney Rule, all those kind of things.
Right. That's the thing people get upset about.
Yeah, that's what they get upset about. But within the limitations of the franchise rules, right? He's still the owner, and he still wants to put in the guy he trusts. So I don't even to him probably winning is a bonus here, getting the everything in line so he doesn't have to worry about arrows being fired at his back as the owner all day long is probably the bigger interest, and not having to get all the players that are on the team to think the organization has nothing else, so they all want to get the hell out of there, right? So I think that's kind of goes a lot into it. Now, the whole Rooney Rule thing, I have my own take on the Rooney Rule. Like, there's pros and cons to it. I think on sides, I think that it's helped minority coaches. I do think it's helped minority coaches. Do I think the quote unquote that sometimes they have an interview that doesn't turn out to be the way that they want it? Yeah. But you know what? The truth is it's helped a lot of minority coaches. But if they didn't if they violated a rule set by the NFL in this case, that should be addressed as a separate issue. The reason why he hired them, to me, is to hire Jeff Saturday is a different thing. Whether he violated the Rooney Rule or not, maybe he did. I don't know. But as far as his reasoning, it's just, to me, it's like, hey, I trust this guy, and you know what? Like, I need somebody to still some level of order in the organization. That's it.
Yeah, I honestly, you own your own company. You should be able to do what you want within the confines of legality.
Right.
And that's not the NFL, and that's, but it wasn't just Rooney Rule people that were criticizing this. It was NFL purists, So listen, he won the game. He got a game ball. They're 1-0. The Raiders are a disaster. And it's just kind of points to two different things. You can go out there and get the hot assistant like McDaniel and ruin your team. I mean, Derek Carr's worse, and he has Devontae Adams now. He's worse. That's impossible. Or you can sometimes take a shot at a Jeff Saturday and spark a team, and they'll play for you. So you just don't know.
You don't know.
But the thing that bothers me is the guarantee contracts. Why guarantee Jimbo Fisher $100 million? Why have an $86 million buyout? Why give Mel Tucker $80+ million guaranteed? Because you're afraid someone else is going to hire him? So what? Let someone else hire him. Let them be their headache. You can't give them guaranteed money. But they will continue to do so, and it will continue to hurt programs left and right, and that's what we're going to continue to see. And listen, as long as you're making that much money and I'm criticizing you, it makes me feel okay, because you're making more than me. Now, I'm going to praise you as well if you do good.
Right.
I mean, Brian Kelly, what he's done at LSU is great. I thought he was going to be a failure. He's done great, and he's got $90 million guaranteed as well. So good on you. But when things start to fall apart, I'm going to criticize you. That's just the way it is. We've gone over. So myfootballcamps.com/D1. No, you don't need to promote us.
We promote you.
We promote you. And listen, I like I said, I'll let this kid know, but I don't have it in me. I don't to really explain this. Maybe I'll flip this one to Coach Manis. He's a much more patient human being than I am in this case. But we'll promote you. We'll get you out there. We'll get you noticed. If they like you, they like you. If they don't, they don't. But I'll tell you what, you'll no longer be running routes in the dark on Twitter, as Coach Schumann said. You'll be absolutely out there in front of the right people. So let's wrap it up and I guess move on.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. And myfootballcamps.com. We'll see you soon. Another great podcast, very interesting stuff. I got to get back to start doing some clipping. So.
Yeah, you haven't clipped in a while. Now I can't yell at you because I don't know how to clip.
I got to go clip. So
the clipping's good. That would be helpful. So if you got clips, send them to me. I'll put them out there.
You got it.
All right,
have a great day.
See ya.